The Toronto Blue Jays are sitting on a powder keg of potential that absolutely nobody is talking about, and honestly, it's borderline criminal how much this story has flown under the radar. While everyone and their grandmother was losing their minds over the Kyle Tucker trade and debating whether Vladimir Guerrero Jr. would finally sign an extension, the Blue Jays quietly made a move that could end up being one of the smartest decisions of their entire offseason. We're talking about a player with a proven track record, a former phenom who once had the baseball world in the palm of his hand, and according to insider reports coming out of the Dominican Winter League, this guy has completely transformed himself. The kicker? He's on a minor league deal, which means the Blue Jays are getting a lottery ticket that could pay out like a jackpot without risking a single penny of their payroll flexibility.
Let me set the stage for you, because this story has more twists than a telenovela. The player in question is Eloy Jimenez. And before you roll your eyes and click away thinking you know everything about this guy, I need you to pump the brakes and hear me out. Yes, this is the same Eloy Jimenez who had a disastrous 2024 season. Yes, this is the same guy who couldn't stay healthy for years and watched his once promising career spiral into what looked like an early retirement trajectory. But here's where things get absolutely wild. Reports from trusted baseball insiders Hector Gomez and Mike Rodriguez are painting a picture that sounds too good to be true, except the receipts are starting to pile up, and they're looking pretty damn legitimate. According to these reports, Eloy Jimenez isn't just back playing baseball. The man has undergone a complete physical transformation that has him in, quote, the best shape of his life. We've all heard that phrase before during spring training when some washed-up veteran shows up 10 pounds lighter, and suddenly everyone's supposed to believe they've found the fountain of youth, right? Except this time, Jimenez isn't just talking the talk. He's been walking the walk down in the Dominican Winter League, and the numbers are absolutely eye-popping. The dude led the entire league with 10 doubles during the round-robin portion and absolutely crushed it with 16 runs batted in. But it's not just about the offensive production, though those numbers are certainly encouraging. Multiple scouts and observers have noted that Jimenez has been playing above-average defense at first base, which for anyone who's followed his career knows that defense has never exactly been his calling card. Mike Rodriguez didn't mince words when he put his reputation on the line with a bold prediction. He said, and I quote, "I'm confident that if he stays healthy and Toronto gives him playing time, he can have a 30 home run season with 90 RBIs. Could even become comeback player of the year." Now, I'm not here to tell you that Eloy Jimenez is about to waltz into spring training and immediately claim a starting spot on opening day. That would be irresponsible speculation, and we need to keep our expectations grounded in reality. But what I am telling you is that the Blue Jays have absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain from this gamble, and the early returns suggest that maybe, just maybe, pitching coach and de facto player development guru Dave Popkins has worked his magic once again. Let's rewind the clock for a minute and remember who Eloy Jimenez was before injuries turned him into a cautionary tale. This wasn't some organizational depth piece or fourth outfielder hoping to catch lightning in a bottle. Jimenez was a legitimate five-tool prospect who had scouts drooling over his potential. We're talking about a guy who slashed an absolutely bonkers .303 batting average with 329 RBIs during his minor league career. The Chicago White Sox thought so highly of him that he became a centerpiece of their rebuilding efforts, and for a couple of years, it looked like they had struck gold. In 2020, Jimenez posted an .828 OPS and finished as a runner-up for American League Rookie of the Year. 2 years later, despite playing in only 84 games, he absolutely raked to the tune of a 141 OPS plus and an .858 OPS. Those aren't the numbers of a fringe player hoping to hang around the majors. Those are all-star caliber offensive statistics. But then the injury bug bit hard, and it bit repeatedly. Jimenez became one of those frustrating players who would flash brilliance for a few weeks before landing back on the injured list. His 2024 season was an absolute disaster, finishing with a putrid .625 OPS that had teams running away from him faster than fans leaving a blowout game in the seventh inning. When you look at his StatCast data from last year, it's a sea of red, and not the good kind. His defense metrics were atrocious, his sprint speed was below average, and despite maintaining solid exit velocity numbers that showed his raw power hadn't completely abandoned him, he just couldn't put it all together. The Baltimore Orioles gave him a spring training look, and Jimenez responded by hitting an embarrassing .083, essentially punching his ticket out of town before the season even started. So why should we care now? What's changed? Here's the thing that makes this situation genuinely intriguing, rather than just another spring training feel-good story that fizzles out by May. Eloy Jimenez is only 29 years old. In baseball years, especially for a designated hitter and first baseman type, that's still young enough to have several productive years ahead if the body cooperates. He's not some 37-year-old veteran trying to squeeze out one last paycheck. This is a guy who should theoretically still be in his prime, and if the reports about his physical transformation are accurate,
We could be looking at a legitimate reclamation project that pays massive dividends. The Blue Jays have a history recently of taking flyers on players who other organizations had written off. Remember when they signed Yusei Kikuchi to a minor league deal after he had been designated for assignment? That didn't work out long term, but it showed the organization's willingness to take chances on talent. They brought in Ty France at the trade deadline last year, even though roster space was tight, banking on the idea that his bat could provide value. France isn't coming back, which creates an interesting opportunity. The Blue Jays need depth at first base behind Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and while Ernie Clement and potentially Jake Okamoto provide some insurance, neither of them brings the kind of thunder that Jimenez's bat could provide if he even recaptures 70% of what he was in 2022. Let's talk about the role Jimenez could fill, because it's important to understand that nobody's suggesting he's going to start 150 games. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is entrenched at first base, and Anthony Santander is going to get the bulk of the DH at bats. George Springer will rotate through, Alejandro Kirk will get some time there, and the Blue Jays like to keep their regulars fresh by cycling guys through that spot. But here's where Jimenez becomes fascinating. Every competitive team needs quality depth, especially bench bats who can punish left-handed pitching or provide a spark in a pinch hit situation. Jimenez has historically crushed lefties when healthy, and even in his down years, he's shown flashes of that power stroke that made him so special as a prospect. The beautiful part about this entire situation is the risk-reward calculation. This is a minor league contract, which means if Jimenez shows up to spring training and looks like the same broken-down version we saw struggling in Baltimore, the Blue Jays can simply release him and move on without any financial commitment or roster complications. There's no sunk cost fallacy to worry about, no pressure to give him at-bats just because they invested real money. But if he shows up looking like the reports suggest, if his body truly has transformed, if Dave Popkins can work with him to unlock even a portion of his previous form, suddenly the Blue Jays have one of the best bargains in baseball sitting in their back pocket. Dave Popkins deserves special mention here because his track record with reclamation projects and helping hitters unlock their potential has been nothing short of remarkable. Social media has been buzzing with fans proclaiming, "Another David Popkins masterclass incoming." And while that might sound like hyperbole, there's genuine substance behind the optimism. Popkins has a reputation for getting into the heads of hitters, helping them make adjustments, and maximizing their tools. If anyone can help Jimenez rediscover the swing mechanics and approach that made him so dangerous, it's Popkins. The fact that Jimenez has already shown in Winter League play that he can still hit for average and drive in runs suggests the foundation is there to build on. Now, I want to pump the brakes on the 30 home run prediction because setting expectations that high is how you end up disappointed when reality falls short. But let's play devil's advocate for a second. If Eloy Jimenez can stay healthy for 100 games, splits time between DH and first base, and the Blue Jays give him 300 plate appearances, is 15 to 20 home runs really that far-fetched? His exit velocity has remained strong even during his struggles, which means the raw power is still in there somewhere. He's shown in winter ball that he can make consistent contact again, and he's going to be motivated like never before because this is potentially his last shot at earning a significant major league contract. Players in contract years or prove-it situations often elevate their games, and Jimenez has every incentive in the world to ball out if given the opportunity. The comparison to Ty France is interesting because it highlights how the Blue Jays think about roster construction. France wasn't supposed to have a clear path to playing time when they acquired him at the deadline, but the front office valued his bat enough to find creative ways to get him into the lineup. Jimenez could serve a similar function, providing insurance against injury, giving Guerrero occasional days off, and offering a potent left-handed bat off the bench. In today's game where matchups matter more than ever, and having the right hitter for the right situation can swing entire playoff series, that kind of depth isn't just nice to have. It's essential for teams with championship aspirations. Let's also address the elephant in the room regarding Jimenez's defense, because historically it's been, to put it charitably, not good. His metrics at both corner outfield positions and first base have been consistently below average throughout his career. But here's the thing. If he's genuinely transformed his body, lost weight, improved his conditioning, and dedicated himself to defensive work, we can't just dismiss the possibility that he's made meaningful improvements. Playing above average defense at first base in winter ball isn't the same as doing it over a full major league season, but it's at least a data point suggesting he's taking that side of the game seriously. And frankly, for a guy who's going to primarily DH anyway, being merely competent at first base would be a huge win. What makes this story even more compelling is how it fits into the larger narrative of the Blue Jays' organizational philosophy right now. This isn't a team that's tearing everything down and punting on contention. They traded for Kyle Tucker, extended Shane Bieber, and are clearly trying to compete for a playoff spot. But they're also being smart about how they allocate resources, taking calculated risks on high upside players while not handcuffing themselves financially. The Jimenez signing embodies that approach perfectly. Zero financial risk, massive potential upside, and if it works out, they look like geniuses who found value everyone else overlooked. Speaking of overlooked value, we need to talk about what's happening with the Blue Jays farm system because it ties directly into why this organization is starting to turn heads around baseball. ESPN prospect analyst Kylie McDaniel recently ranked the Blue Jays farm system 16th in baseball, and while that might not sound earth-shattering on the surface, you need context to understand how remarkable that ranking actually is. Just a few years ago, before the 2024 trade deadline, the Blue Jays system was widely considered one of the worst in baseball. They had gutted their prospect capital to go all in on contention, and while that strategy got them into the playoffs, it left the organizational depth severely depleted. Fast forward to today, and not only have they climbed to 16th, but they've done so after trading away significant prospect capital for major league talent. They sent Gordon Graceffo to the Cardinals for Anthony Dominguez. They moved Cal Stevenson, who was their 5th-ranked prospect overall and a top pitching prospect, to Cleveland as part of the Shane Bieber extension. They made several deadline deals that cost them prospects, and yet they're still ranked in the top half of baseball. That's not just impressive organizational management, that's borderline wizardry from the scouting and development departments. The crown jewel of the system is Trey Savage, who ESPN ranks as the 14th best prospect in all of baseball. McDaniel noted that Savage has one of the highest floors in recent top 100 history, which is about as ringing an endorsement as a prospect can get. High-floor prospects are the ones who almost always become productive major leaguers, even if they don't quite reach superstar status. And having that kind of safety with your top prospect is incredibly valuable. But Savage isn't alone in generating excitement. McDaniel specifically mentioned being high on first-round pick JoJo Parker, projecting him to potentially hit .275 with 20 home runs annually. Those are borderline all-star level projections if everything breaks right. Johnny King and Gage Staniford got shout-outs as additional top 10 prospects worth monitoring, but here's where things get really spicy. McDaniel specifically name-dropped Sam Shaw and Juan Sanchez as sleeper infielders with top 100 potential. For anyone who's been following the Blue Jays closely, Juan Sanchez is an absolute monster in the making. His combination of raw power, bat speed, and defensive versatility has evaluators salivating over his long-term potential. If Sanchez continues developing and cracks the top 100, suddenly the Blue Jays aren't just rebuilding their farm system, they're potentially sitting on multiple impact prospects who could contribute at the major league level over the next few years. This matters for the Eloy Jimenez conversation because it shows the Blue Jays are playing chess while other teams are playing checkers. They're competing now with the major league roster, taking flyers on high upside players like Jimenez who could help immediately. But they're also building sustainable organizational depth that will keep them competitive for years to come. The days of the farm system being a barren wasteland are over, replaced by legitimate excitement about players like Ricky Tiedemann, who could impact the major league roster this very season as a starting pitcher, and Parker, who profiles as a potential everyday player down the line. It's worth noting how far this organization has come from those dark days just a few years ago. Fans remember the excitement of Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s debut, his father in attendance watching him rip a double down the first base line in his first game. They remember the hype around Bo Bichette, Nate Pearson, and the wave of prospects who were supposed to lead Toronto to sustained success. Some of those guys panned out, others didn't. But the point is there was genuine organizational depth and excitement about the future. That feeling dissipated as prospects graduated and weren't replaced with comparable talent. But now it's roaring back with a new generation of players who could form the core of future contending teams. The Blue Jays are threading a very difficult needle right now. They're trying to maximize Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s remaining time under team control, hoping to convince him to sign a long-term extension. They're surrounding him with major league talent like Tucker and Bieber, while also rebuilding the organizational infrastructure that allows teams to sustain success. And they're taking smart gambles on players like Eloy Jimenez, who could provide immediate value without compromising long-term flexibility. If this all comes together, if Jimenez rediscovers even a fraction of his old form, if the prospects continue developing, if the major league roster stays healthy and performs to expectations, we could be looking at a Blue Jays team that's not just competitive, but legitimately dangerous in the American League. The spring training storylines practically write themselves. You'll have guys like George Springer trying to prove last year's regular season performance wasn't a fluke after his generationally awful spring. You'll have Jimenez fighting to make the opening day roster against younger players with more defensive versatility. You'll have Tiedemann trying to force his way into the rotation conversation. Spring training stats don't always translate to regular season success, and we've seen plenty of March heroes become April zeros. But these battles matter because they reveal who wants it more, who's put in the work, and who's going to seize opportunities when they arise. For Eloy Jimenez specifically, spring training is everything.
He needs to prove the Winter League performance wasn't a mirage. He needs to show he can stay healthy through the grind of daily baseball activities. He needs to demonstrate that his swing can handle high-quality pitching and that his body can handle the defensive demands of first base. If he checks all those boxes, the Blue Jays would be foolish not to find room for him on the roster, even if it means carrying an extra bat at the expense of another reliever or utility player. The potential offensive production justifies creative roster construction. What's fascinating about this entire situation is how it encapsulates modern baseball roster building. Gone are the days when teams would commit nine-figure contracts to aging sluggers based purely on past performance. The market has corrected to value younger players under team control, and veterans have to prove themselves on minor league deals or short-term contracts before earning security. Jimenez is the poster child for this new reality. He's not bitter about it. He's embraced the challenge, put in the work to transform his body, and he's betting on himself to earn that next big contract. That kind of hunger and motivation can be infectious in a clubhouse. And if the Blue Jays are smart, they'll use his presence to push other players to elevate their games. The broader baseball world is starting to take notice of what's happening in Toronto, and not just because of the Kyle Tucker trade. Writers and analysts are recognizing that this organization has turned a corner both at the major and minor league levels. The farm system ranking is just one indicator, but it's an important one because it signals to other teams that the Blue Jays won't be desperate sellers if things go south. They can afford to be patient, to develop talent, and to make smart acquisitions rather than panic moves. That organizational stability and depth is what separates perennial contenders from flash-in-the-pan wildcard teams. As we approach spring training, the Eloy Jimenez situation deserves way more attention than it's getting. This isn't just another minor league signing to fill out AAA roster depth. This is a calculated gamble on a former elite talent who's motivated, prepared, and showing all the early signs of a successful comeback. Will he hit 30 home runs and win Comeback Player of the Year? Probably not. And setting those kinds of expectations is setting everyone up for disappointment. But could he provide 15 home runs, quality at-bats against left-handed pitching, and veteran leadership in the clubhouse? Absolutely. And that alone would make this signing a massive win for the Blue Jays. The beauty of baseball is that careers rarely follow straight lines. Players fall off, rediscover themselves, adapt their games, and reinvent their value propositions. Eloy Jimenez is attempting to do exactly that, and the Blue Jays are giving him the opportunity. Whether this turns into one of the feel-good stories of the season or just another forgotten spring training camp body remains to be seen. But the early returns are encouraging enough that we should all be paying attention. So keep your eyes on Eloy Jimenez when spring training camps open. Watch how he looks in batting practice. Pay attention to the defensive work at first base. Listen to what coaches and teammates say about his preparation and conditioning. Because if the reports are accurate, if the transformation is real, the Toronto Blue Jays might have just found themselves a secret weapon that could make a real difference in a competitive American League playoff race. And at the end of the day, isn't that what makes baseball beautiful? The possibility that any player, on any day, can rediscover the magic and remind us why we fell in love with this game in the first place. Now it's your turn to weigh in. Do you think Eloy Jimenez can recapture his former glory and become a key contributor for the Blue Jays this season? Are you as excited as I am about the farm system climbing back into relevance? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I want to hear what you think about this under-the-radar signing and whether Toronto's front office has pulled off another stroke of genius. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the Blue Jays' secret weapon, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another update on your favorite team. We've got more Blue Jays content coming your way, including that Sam Shaw breakdown I promised.